This was the worst unit I've ever had to clean out ever. This video was taken close to the end of the job.
Nightmarish amount of roaches all over the floor. We're all geared up. They're everywhere.
There were millions of roaches.
We got this room cleared out. Roaches decided to stay though. Oh my gosh. What? Just this wall. There's like on the camera it's like a black line. Oh, it doesn't end there, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Yeah. Bagging everything up. Shovel scoop at a time. This was the first room we completed. Barely any roaches in here. They're all in that back room now.
No way. Did you see all those roaches? Oh my gosh. Ain't no way. I think if I was down bad like that, I think I would get me a storage unit. I think I would just live in my car and I would just shower at the gym. Get me a gym membership until I could get money up. Ain't no way I could live in a situation like that. Oh my gosh. So let's continue.
I'm home and my driveway's gone.
What used to be a concrete slab outside 1438 Bethesda Street is now a patch of dirt that she didn't ask for. Someone took her driveway as she was trying to get ready for Christmas.
Of all the things that you worried about getting stolen, did you think the driveway was one of them?
No, not at all.
When you live in the hood, you got to secure your tires because they might grow a pair of legs and run away from you. Why you run away from me, tires and rims? At least they didn't damage anything in the process.
That I wanted to touch on, because a lot of y'all that are familiar with those videos, that they watch them, I oftentimes talk about quote unquote the hood, and that people that stay in the hood doesn't necessarily mean that they're poor, right? Or that they can't afford things. You got a lot of people that live in the hood that work regular jobs, right? They maintain and they make good money, they paying their bills, they saving, they got the means to do things and to have a quality life regardless of where they live. So I came across this video right here, and shout out to old girl, because she basically was saying that growing up in the hood and growing up in poverty is two different things, and I so agree with it. And you know what, it's a lot of people that's in the hood that stay in North Memphis, South Memphis, or whatever we want to call the hood, that are doing okay in life. The hood doesn't necessarily mean that you're poor, that you're impoverished. You see what I'm saying? Just because you live in proximity to a certain area. When I was looking at her video, I was going through the comments. And so one person was like, well, shit, we lived in the hood and my mama didn't qualify for any type of assistance, food stamps, or nothing. She had a good job. She took care of her kids. She was able to afford things. But just because she lived in the hood, people automatically assume that she was impoverished and she was just broke and didn't have money. And that's really not the case. And I was just basically saying, because in one of my videos, I touched on how a lot of my aunties and uncles or whatever that's from North Memphis, South Memphis, and been in their houses 50 plus years or whatever, that live in those environments, they retired. They make a decent living. They're doing pretty well. They're comfortable. Even younger people that are living in these areas. You know what I'm saying? So just because you in the hood per se does not necessarily mean that you're impoverished, or that you broke, or that you can't afford to have a quality of life, to do things, to go out, etc. So then in my videos, when I ride through black predominantly areas in the city of Memphis and there's nothing going on, no economic development, no jobs, nothing to do, no entertainment, no shopping, that's because the leadership assumes just because you're in a specific area or the demographic is majority black, that this area is impoverished. And that's not the case. Do you have people that are in poverty that are in the hood? Yes. But most people that's in the hood, they living pretty comfortable. They're doing okay. They work regular jobs. They raising their families, are doing whatever they need to do, and they want access to shit in their neighborhoods, in their environments. You see what I'm saying? Looking at somebody else that come in and was like, shit, majority of people in the hood are the working class. Exactly. They're the working class. They work too. But oh, because you stay in South Memphis, people just assume that you're broke, that you're less than, because it's quote unquote seen as the hood. You know what I'm saying? Notice anywhere where it's majority black people, and I have to fault myself for this, you know, but they got us calling it the hood when it's majority black. And when it's just a regular working class neighborhood that may not be full of mansions and all this wealth and shit, but the people are doing okay. They can afford things, right? They making a living. That's what the fuck matters. So she absolutely right. Living in the hood and poverty is two different things. The hood does not mean that they're in poverty. It never gave it.
You know, growing up in the hood or growing up poor, you know, is different. When you don't have money to do things, and when I say to do things, I mean like simple things. You know, when you're poor, and like when I was growing up, we had to eat like mayonnaise sandwiches. Sometimes we didn't even have mayonnaise; we just had bread and butter and things like that. When you're growing up poor, you know, you don't get a chance to really come outside of your neighborhood. You know, for most people, man, even to this day, and I'm 57 years old and I still live in the hood, you know, most people's lives in the hood only consist of a few blocks. You know, you might see a few brothers standing up on a corner. Well, not a few, a lot of brothers up on a corner at the corner store. You'll see them standing up at the gas station or just hanging out anywhere at the parks around here, you know, but people really don't have the money to like travel or do it. And when I say travel, I'm not talking about go on some lavish vacation, but this is a big world out here. And you know, when you're poor, you're already depressed, and when you're depressed and you can't go anywhere, it's kind of like a rat being in a cage. And this is why there's probably a lot of violence inside of the inner city, because it is a lot of times you are confined so much to being, you know, in one location with a lot of people who already are poor and don't have anything, you know. But being poor is completely different. And when your life only consists of a few blocks, you know, and people are very prideful of their neighborhoods or their blocks, and that's why you have gangs in certain neighborhoods and stuff like that. But you know, when you don't have the luxury of ever being able to do anything or ever being able to come outside of your environment because of the money that you make. And then on top of that, you know, when you're poor or you live in the inner city, you get the worst food, because if you don't have a lot of money, you're going to get some of the worst food. So that's already going to mess with your mental health. There's a lot of things that go along but with being poor or living in the inner city, you know, especially when you can't come outside of your neighborhood and enjoy the rest of this world, you know. And for most of us, even in the inner city, we have TVs and we can look and see it's a big old beautiful world out there with a lot of things you can do, and people are going to amusement parks. There are a lot of people with money, but when you're a person who don't have money and you can barely pay your bills, and things are depressing, you know, and you go to work only to just survive, you know, it becomes very difficult. So if you're a person who can travel, if you're a person who do have money, you can do things, enjoy that, you know. And I'm not knocking anybody that does. That's a blessing to be able to do that. But for a lot of people, man, our lives only consist of a few blocks, and us going from one part of the town to the other part of the town, you know, we have to calculate the gas money when we do that, whereas a lot of people can just travel freely around the world and around the country. And you know, thumbs up to you if you can do that. But if you can't, just still try to keep your head up.